Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today I'm going to share with you 5 things I think you should know about this upcoming full moon on December 15th, 2024. If I was forced to describe this full moon in one word, it would be empowering. It's a very empowering full moon. Now, with that said, right now, some of you might not be feeling all that powerful. You might be feeling a bit restless, a bit anxious, feeling like there's a lot of things you need to be doing. There's a general tension and anxiety, at least here in the West during the holiday season. And then also, astrologically speaking, it's a time where the cosmos is kind of inviting us to slow down. But in slowing down, it can create this anxiety in us. However, the reality is, all of us can afford to go a bit slower and maybe a bit more methodically through life. And in doing so, remain more present, more conscious of the right choices that need to be made at the right time, aligning us with our power, aligning us with the support, aligning us with our divine essence, and we can bring that into each and every facet of our life. But it requires a slowing down and a remembering and awareness of just how powerful we are. Right now is a time where you can yield, when you can gain a lot more by doing a lot less. But it's a very different way of going about life, and it's especially challenging during the holiday season. But with that said, there are many other kind of interesting elements to this general spiel I just shared with you. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go ahead now and break it down into 5 more specific themes so that you can get the most out of this amazing full moon. Number 1, I wrote down going into the tension. Our ego, our inner child even, usually does everything in its power to help us avoid tension, avoid the unknown, avoid the feelings of being uncomfortable, where things are unpredictable, uncertain. Our higher self, our soul, conversely, does pretty much the exact opposite. It tends to lure us into directions in life, projects, situations that are very uncomfortable at a very deep level. Sometimes these things we're attracted to also, interestingly enough, can provoke all of our old childhood fears and doubts and anxieties, our self-worth issues and things like that. And there can be this kind of push and pull effect where on one hand, this thing is calling me. This thing resonates. Maybe for you, you're stepping into like a new career path, doing something like becoming a coach or a healer or a psychic, using your spiritual gifts in some kind of way. And on one hand, on a deep level, you know it's like what you're meant to do. You know on another level, you have what it takes. There's a lot of soul wisdom within you. However, the human part of you, it becomes very, again, quite anxious in this situation. But now is the time, my friends, to go into the tension, not to avoid it, because only is that a way that we can show ourselves that we have what it takes. And it's not easy. Like right now, my good friend Aaron Dowdy, he just ran. I've talked about him actually before as an example in these updates. He's a YouTuber like me, but he has a passion for doing in-person events. Which, if you one of the things I am is a business coach, and I help YouTubers and people like that. And I know how hard it is for people to get themselves on camera and to put themselves out there on social media, to be judged by people, by their family, by the masses. What's even 1,000 times harder is doing that in an in-person situation. And Aaron also has felt inspired to put on these live events. And he's kind of eased his way into it, where the first few live events, he would have me help, my wife and his friends, and it was like this group thing. But this recent one he just did in LA was where he was completely by himself. He didn't have any of his like buddies there to like, take some of the weight and the pressure off his shoulders. And it was a big deal for him, as were the other events as well. Every step along the way, he was met with his inner child's doubt, his fears, his anxiety. He would struggle to sleep sometimes at night. We'd have a lot of conversations about just all the nerves he was feeling. Yet it's like, well, why are you doing it then? Why don't you just not do it? Well, because he's called to do it. Because there's a part of him that also enjoys doing it. There's a part of him that knows it's his mission. Well, this last one he did, he not only did he have none of his friends there, but he also went in there unscripted, which is kind of scary for a public speaker to go in there like not knowing what you're going to say, knowing there might be hundreds of people waiting and expecting something really good from you. They just paid money to see what you got to say, and you don't even know what the hell's going to happen. You just walk in there and hope for the best. Man, but he did that. And you know what? He had some bumps and bruises. He had to learn some lessons along the way. But at the end of the day, the event was fantastic. The people were transformed, and he is just soaring with confidence now. He's on like another level of confidence, just in the way he's talking, the things we've been discussing. He's got all these new plans in his life. So many possibilities have opened up for him because he recognized just how powerful of a human being he is by going deeply into the unknown, going into the tension. A lot of us want to have that soaring confidence and that certainty before going into the tension, but it doesn't work that way, does it? And so many spiritual people, I find, have big issues with tension. They assume I should just flow around through life as I want to, as I'm inspired to do, cleverly avoiding all these uncomfortable circumstances. But you know what? In my life, all the good things that have come from tension, which sounds like a bad thing. I used to be a fitness trainer, as an example. Every workout for every client was filled and riddled with nothing but tension. And you know what? They left each session feeling amazing. Not only physically, not only because their blood was flowing and their heart was pumping and they were becoming fit and strong and lean and having good endurance and things like that, but because of also there's a sense of satisfaction of weathering storms. There's a sense of fulfillment we get. There's almost like a human need to push ourselves, to challenge ourselves. And if you can do it in ways that are guided by your inner being, it's going to work out for you in a very holistic way. So some of you, for example, might have this calling to start a new career. And on one hand, if you go in there and you rock it out, you'll probably make a lot more money. You'll probably have a really awesome lifestyle and things of that nature that are attractive to you on a very sort of like physical level. But also there's this awareness of witnessing yourself persevering through challenges that is priceless. And that is like this intangible quality that will enhance everything you do. It'll do nothing but open up other doors for you in life. But it's hard to do. It's like, yeah, it sounds, I agree, Vic, but I don't want to do it still. It's like, I don't want to get out of bed. It's hard, especially during these types of like retrograde types of energies where you just feel kind of like out of sorts to begin with. You feel like now's not the time. I'm not feeling as energized and as put together as I would like to be. But now's the time to do it, my friends, and I encourage you to do so, especially if you're feeling called. Number two, it's a great time. It's going to seem like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm not. It's a great time to slow down, but gain more. As I kind of mentioned earlier in the reading, life, your higher self will oftentimes sort of encourage you, sometimes sort of force you to slow down when it's okay to, when it's smart, when it's wise to, when maybe in the near future, there will be a lot of activity and you need your rest. But the mind doesn't know that. The mind always thinks there's a million things to do. I always have a list of stuff I have to do, and I'm not above this, but when we can sort of slow down, especially when we're feeling called to, then a lot of times it gives us an opportunity to look from a broader, like a higher perspective at our life, at where we're going, things like that. I had this guy I knew named Sam Ovens. I joined his business mastermind a few years ago. Me and Aaron both did. The other guy I was talking about, Aaron. And this guy was like a very, very successful entrepreneur, making upwards of $10 million a year. And he said that the more successful he became in business, the less work he did and the more planning he would do. He said for him, it became like a 50-50 split where half the time was him with his notebook out in nature or sitting outside, like brainstorming, really making sure all of his actions were aligned with his greater vision, his future vision, and making sure they were wise and well thought out and kind of calculated and things like that. And I'm not necessarily encouraging you to become really analytical, but I'm saying there is power to that. A lot of times when there's a lot of this type of energy, we get kind of restless, and we try to ease this tension, this like anxiety with doing and trying to stay busy and trying to get all our things done. And a lot of times when we do that, we get kind of swept away in this frenetic energy. And then a lot of our actions are not really very fruitful. And that's also maybe the timing is off and we're doing a lot of work. We're not getting very far. Now's a time when you can relax. You can try to relax. You can rest. You can, at the very least, do less in order to tap in to the ability to have more mental clarity. And to really ask yourself, do I need to do this now? Does this have to get done today? I did this just yesterday because I've been literally not practicing any of what I'm telling you now. I've been bustling around needlessly for a while because I get like restless and anxious in this type of retrograde energy. But yesterday I made myself not work. And I busted out my little notebook here and I kind of just planned out in a free flow way my next year. And it's very hopeful. It made me realize, I don't have to do nearly as much as I thought, because here are the important things, the real needle moving actions in my life, and they can wait. And when I get to them, I can do so in a much more calculated way. My life is a lot less overwhelming, at least to me personally, because I took the time to relax and step back and kind of like play all this out. And also for you folks out there who are engaged in a project where it is requiring a lot of work, which might make you feel like, this number 2 is not really for me. It is for you, but maybe in a different way. And this is also a time of asking yourself, are my actions sustainable? Especially if you're working towards something like a career. Like right now, I'm working towards guitar, for example. And what I found, interestingly, like several months back, is that when I was practicing too much, I was becoming kind of frustrated and kind of stressed and also fatigued. So the quality of my practice was actually less. And I found that if I can really wait until I'm after I meditate or something and I'm very mindful and I have a very clear action plan and I take the time to warm up my fingers, I can get away with practicing a lot less, but I'm advancing much, much, much more quickly. Okay? If you're one of those all or nothing people, which I am, this is again advice for me, it's a good time to really learn this sort of smarter, longer term thinking way of going about life, where it's like really not biting off more than you can chew, not being lazy necessarily, but really trying to find your ideal productivity level. This also what comes to mind is like the many people who I talk to as a coach who are like getting onto social media, getting onto Instagram, getting onto YouTube. A lot of them will come into it very ambitious. I'm going to make a video every day, Vic, and you know what? I know if I can do that in a year, I'm going to be in a completely different spot in my life, and it's amazing. And for the first maybe few weeks, they're full of vigor and energy, and there's this momentum they're creating, and then all of a sudden, They start to run out of ideas of what to talk about or write about or share about, and things start to crop up in their life, and it makes it really like this train they've sort of set in motion becomes very, very difficult to keep up with and to keep adding fuel to the fire. And all of a sudden they find themselves like really going on fumes, and to the point where they just burn out. And not only are they burning out, but they hate their life. They got into this new thing because they wanted to express themselves and they wanted to help people and all these wonderful reasons. But all of a sudden it becomes like this grind. They didn't mean for it to be, but here it is. They're grinding around. It's another job and they hate it. And a lot of those people, they have good intention. They want to succeed. They want to help people, but they end up quitting because they've taken on too much. And my answer for these folks, they usually come to me once they're burnt out. And they're concerned. I don't think I can stop because I committed and I don't want to feel like I failed myself and things like that. But it's always a lesson in pacing, a lesson in dosage. Our lives are so complex now. Not only that, but at least you can tell me if I'm wrong, but one of the difficult things to put into words that I'm experiencing in my own life is not only are there way more things in my life calling for my attention, but I think because most people are evolving their consciousness, becoming more sensitive, there's almost a greater depth of energetic bandwidth required to do things that maybe were previously done less consciously and more like, that therefore didn't require as much energy. So it's like there's a lot of our attention, a lot of our energy is really being sort of zapped out of us. And sometimes a simple task, for example, like, okay, I can make a 1 minute Instagram video a day. That's no big deal. Well, that 1 minute requires maybe an hour of like creative contemplation, maybe several different takes. Then there's the editing. And maybe it does take you actually 15, 20 minutes per day. That's a lot of vitality, a lot of your life force going into that thing. And then it can take away from other things that might be important to you. So it's really just a great time to evaluate, where's your energy going? Where's your attention going? Going back to like earlier in this point number 2, it's like stepping back. Make sure your actions are aligned. So you got the idea of point number 2. I say it's safe to move on. Number 3 is going to seem far more esoteric than any of the things I've talked about thus far. And I forgot exactly what I wrote down, but it's something along the lines of playing a part in other people's karma. What? Where'd this come from, buddy? So, I'm going to ask you, have you noticed that sometimes you're a part of something that is really intense and dramatic for other people, and you find yourself, strangely enough, quite detached? And for me, I sometimes think to myself, I wonder if this really isn't quite for me necessarily. For example, my wife the other day was rear-ended, real badly too. My wife is fine, and our car's not even that bad. But this poor young teenager, like 16, 17-year-old girl, smoked my wife's car. Everybody was stopping, and she was looking down at her phone or something, and bam, it was bad. And the poor girl, she like hit her face on the steering wheel, and she had a bloody nose, and she was just very, very distraught. It really, really shook her up. And not only that, it was like her fault. So she's gonna have to pay, her insurance is gonna go through the roof, and the police had to come. It was like this whole thing. And my wife felt like just kind of like, not that she didn't care, but almost like she didn't care. She felt like emotionally neutral, and if anything, found herself trying to be there for this poor girl and letting her know it's okay. And she brought the dog. She had the dogs with them, so she brought the dogs out, and everybody was petting the dogs. It was kind of this nice experience for my wife in a way. But for this other person, you could just see just how shooken up she was. And sometimes things like that will happen. Another thing's happening with us right now, as another example, is the house we're living in is going through so many problems. We had the hot water heater break or burst or leak badly the other day. And all of a sudden we're sitting there watching TV, and we see we hear running water in our house. It's just gushing out of the ceiling, as if there were buckets of water being dumped out of the light socket and things like that. And it was crazy. And we did our best. We kind of mopped it up. And then like we went to bed that night, and then it happened again. More water started basically raining in our bedroom, it seemed like. And anyway, these poor owners of this house, they have a tremendous amount of water damage, and it's just a huge pain in the butt for them. And I could tell it's stressing them out, and they're just not being very responsive. And you can just tell it's like, this is like really weighing on them. But for us, yeah, we're without hot water a day or so, but like we're emotionally and like our inner world has not really been shaken. There's a sense of like detachment, but it's a huge deal for other people, but it involves us. So, but in the past, I say all this because in the past, I used to allow myself to get sucked into other people's drama because I've been empathic most of my life. Most of you have as well. But in the past, I was not good at having like awareness boundaries or energetic boundaries where I didn't know I had the option to kind of like stay within myself. I didn't have the discernment. What is mine, which I'll deal with. I'm not going to run from it, but what is theirs? I thought I took it all on as my own. And I thought, oh, this is just how I am. And it's like, no, I just didn't know any better. I didn't know that there's an option to stay within myself, to stay grounded, to stay really self-aware, not detached, not like I'm callous. In fact, the more boundaries I can set, the more energy I have to be of service of other people, just like my wife was. Imagine if I was tangled up in the owner's, stress, and then as I'm messaging with them, I might become irritable and lippy and take it out on my kids. It's like, no, because I can detach, I can be polite. I can allow them to do their thing. I can be there for my family. So, that's kind of what I meant by point number 3. Number 4, you might feel yourself like really seriously contemplating living a more simple life. Living simply is kind of what I put there. And I'm going through this too, where I'm almost waking up to the fact that my life is unnecessarily complex. Even like our house, for example, like all this stuff going on with our house, it made us start, my wife and I start realizing that, you know what? Why do we even have like this type of house, like a big house kind of? It's like not worth it. It's not worth it. There's a lot of like drama, not just here. Other things have been issues as well. We're like, why don't we just like downsize? Why don't we just like relax? And I've had this sort of wave come over me many times in my life. And in the past, I would take it very seriously. And there have been not one, but 2 times I've literally sold my home and moved into a travel trailer with my whole family. Twice we've done that with our dogs and kids. It's kind of an extreme thing to do, but there is this real feeling of like, I want to be free. I don't want to have as much stuff to contend with and manage and stay cleanly with. That's not the right word, but you get the idea. It's almost like my life is becoming nothing but maintaining, usually not even effectively, all the complexity of my life. And it's like, I just want to wake up and read a book and like chill and play and have time and bandwidth to be present so I can enjoy the things in my life. And also, I think people are feeling this in their own way also because I think unless humanity in general learns to do this to some extent, it's like obviously the way we're going is completely unsustainable. It's like we're consuming so much just plastic. It's like crazy. I'm not like trying to judge anybody, but I think there's this like conditioning in society and also unchecked ego desires and this sort of like unconscious need for more. We're all trying to find God. We're all trying to find the light within ourselves through all these things. And it's like, I think it's becoming like where people are starting to see the writing on the wall and realize this is stupid. This is like, why am I doing this? This is no way to live. So anyways, so you might find yourself called to like live more simply. And what are some things you could do? Like we already had plans, my family and I, to like really make some serious changes. And it's not easy because there also is like the need to go against your habits, basically your spending habits, your habits and just the things you have in life and things like that. So I think it will take a lot of discipline, maybe, at least for me, to truly execute this plan of like going into like this direction of minimalism. But anyway, you might just feel that. And also I don't know if you know this other astrologer named Barack. I think her name is Barack. She's a badass astrologer. One of the only one I'll actually listen to, actually. Not dogging on any other one, but she's really good. And she talked about this. She knows more about actual astrology than I do. And she said this whole next year, there's going to be a big theme of that, really finding a way to live simply so we can be more at peace, so we can have more time for the things that really matter in our life, family, laughter, joy, things like that. And then finally, my friend, number 5, I wrote down along for the ride. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we will be attracted to something or want to manifest something. And then in doing so, we find something that's very different than what we were intending, but it's actually in alignment. It's more in alignment and it's better. So it's very important not to get too attached to any particular outcome at this time and to really just trust like the energy of it, basically, like the underlying excitement, frequency, the passion that is luring you kind of into these new things in your life, knowing that what you assume it might look like in the end it could be very different than that. And I've had this happen many times. I've gone for something I really insisted I wanted, come to find in the process during the journey, which is usually met with a lot of different sort of ups and downs and things like that, where you feel like you're not getting anywhere. All of a sudden you find yourself finding this other thing that might be kind of related and actually a better fit. And you realize, oh, I never even needed this other thing to begin with. If that was confusing, I'll give you kind of a simple example. I've been really trying to find like the right jiu-jitsu gym. It's like a martial art, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I've been trying to find the right gym. And I've gone to like 4 or 5 different gyms, tried these different options out. And finally, this 5th one I joined, and all of them seemed to not be right. There would be like things that were awesome about them, then other things that were like deal breakers. And I found it like, I wondered like, why is this so hard? Why is it so hard like manifest like a gym that feels like perfect for me? It feels like there were these things that were just super off. And anyway, I finally found this other one, a 10th Planet, it's like MMA. It's an MMA gym in Austin. And I also they had these other classes, like kickboxing classes. And I went to this one class and I forgot how much I love kickboxing. And now I find myself at this different gym, way different than I had thought. And I'm doing a lot more like striking and kickboxing. Jiu-jitsu is more of a secondary thing for me. I know this is like a very maybe unnecessary personal thing, but what I realized, like, there's a feeling I have during these kickboxing classes that makes me at a higher level of happiness and satisfaction than I was getting from the jiu-jitsu. Not that I won't do it, but the point is, like, I was sure I want to find the right jiu-jitsu gym, but in doing so, I found something that, come to find, I like even better. It brings out more joy, more happiness, and things like that. So that's a very, of course, not essential example. But I've had this also play out with career options. I've had this play out with where I'm going to live, living location, relationships, important things like this. It's also good to be flexible and just go along for the ride and to trust. And to trust your ability to truly attract into your life not only the things you need, but also the things you didn't even know you wanted. And all of these themes, they really come together nicely, where it's a time to slow down and to step back. It's a time to also not shy away from challenges, not shy away from the things that are exciting but also challenging, and to embrace the process of becoming more aware of our power, becoming more confident in our abilities. And in doing so, I think the end result will result in a much more aligned life on absolutely all levels. Maybe with less stuff, as I mentioned, but more joy, more happiness, more passion. Our soul knows what we really want out of life, which is, it's very simple. We want to be happy. We want to be fulfilled. We want to have a sense of purpose. We want to have loving relationships in our life. We want to have fun. And our higher self, your higher self, knows exactly how to get you those things. But in doing so, it's going to require you realize your power and stop limiting yourself. It's going to require you maybe forego some of your attachments with the material world. It's going to require you sit in your anxiety and do nothing sometimes and trust. and take the time to really contemplate and take the time to quiet yourself so you can hear the kind of the soft whispers of your soul. But then once you hear even one, and then you do take action, even if it brings you into the tension, it's going to be like it's going to yield you exponential results. And we can start to navigate our lives essentially more consciously, yielding more joy, happiness, love, and all that good stuff. So that's my take on the full moon, my friends. I wish you well. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this in a long time, but if you feel like you need a big purge, like an energetic purge or an emotional purge, you feel like you're listening to what I'm saying and it makes sense, but you feel very, very much stuck, I'm going to give you a free somatic release breathwork ceremony. This is an online ceremony that will help you do exactly that, release pent-up emotions. It's very, very powerful. Normally I charge for it, but I'll leave a link down below if you want to just put in your email. It's free. You can do it as many times as you want. And I'll leave you with that. Happy holidays, my friends. See you next time. Peace.